We are so excited. We are so excited for another midday cafe. This is one of my favorite times of the month, where we get to gather and deepen our understanding of ourselves and each other. And then each time we have a professional, accredited thought leader, author, writer, practitioner. It just helps us to expand the way we prepare compassion for ourselves and other people. So thank y'all for joining us in the expansion of our compassion for ourselves and other people. We got Sharon Ball with us today, and we're going to have a ball. I'm certain of it. Before we get into Sharon's genius, I want to share with you all a couple of ways that we can continue to expand our learning, grow our community, and deepen our understanding. Clare is acting as our virtual Vanna White. And this is the Wheel of Personality.
Woo, and you know how good I am at this.
You're
So
doing great.
let's start right with, let's go to the global conference first.
Okay, y'all, the IEA, International Enneagram Association's global conference, this year is a game changer. This year is one that I am most excited to be my first conference, because the Enneagram, National Enneagram Association and the Enneagram community is stepping into its advocacy lane, stepping into its activism lane, stepping into what it really means for everyone to have access, for everyone to gain the tools, the knowledge, and the understanding required to best support folks as practitioners. We have some amazing speakers. You can see Sharon there, along with Dio, Chi-Chi. Some of our favorites who have been on our Midday Cafe are going to also be at the conference as speakers and as workshop hosts as well. And so scholarships are available. There's a special fee. Ooh, look at Beatrice Chestnut. Jessica Denise Dixon, Dr.
Here's Danielle, Fanfair.
Hey, I'll be there. Along with so many other folks. Scholarships are available, so click on that link. I'm going to drop all the links into our chat before the end of our experience. And I do that, I wait until kind of the last few minutes, because if you log in after I post the link, you may not see it in the chat. So I'm going to post the links before we leave. There's also a hybrid option. If you're not able to make it out to the Bay, you're able to attend virtually. So go to the link that we set in the chat and register and gain all the information that you need. You know, the IEA Great Lakes region, we have affectionately nicknamed to be anywhere near a lake. And so what I love about this chapter of the IEA is that, man, there are some amazing folks that are in our chapter who are from their corner of the world, creating opportunities to deepen your learning and create really transformative, positive change in the world through the Enneagram. The Enneagram Spectrum training is happening. Oh, Claire, will you scroll back to Motions of the Soul? Yes, okay. So the Crossroads School of Spiritual Direction is the new baby that has come out of Scott and Claire's community of just this really beautifully designed school of supporting people in spiritual direction. This, while it is Christ-centered, what I love about Clare and Scott's teaching is that it's for everybody. And so there will be some deep harmony triadic work that you will learn through this experience. And so we'll put the link to the school in the chat. There are some amazing folks who will be presenting, facilitating, and guiding folks. And so we're really excited about that. I always advocate for the Emotions of the Soul Harmony Triad training. It's something that I use. I mean, I don't know where my bag is, but I literally keep my harmony training workbook with me at all times. It helps me. It's like a support. It's a support animal in a workbook. And then I love the Enneagram Spectrum training with Dr. Jerome Wagner. If you are a science nerd like me and you like to clap back from a psychological and science-based perspective when asked questions about the Enneagram, this training, this certification will really help you do that. I mean, I learned so much from how Dr. Wagner, who is a licensed psychologist, he integrates the Enneagram into, you know, science-based proven study. Hey, there's my website.
Yeah.
Know what's going on with the flyer, but you know, what I love to do is give folks their time back through trainings. I have a teaching the Enneagram certification training, as well as a training that harmonizes the Enneagram with diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, and it's empathy based. And so I love that the Enneagram gives us so much access to give empathy and to broaden who deserves our empathy. Rosemary's not on the call, but Rosemary has a monthly group as well as the Ohio Institute. And so what I love about our chapter is that you're able to really grow just from connecting with some of the folks that are right here in our chapter. The other thing I want to invite you all to do is to sign up for our weekly newsletter. We do not, monthly newsletter. We do not bombard you with information, but the information that we send you is going to be good. You can also join us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Every replay that we've ever done with Midday Cafe is available on our YouTube channel. So that's a great place to integrate a friend into your Enneagram experience without typing them or forcing them to take some test. Just have them rewatch a Midday Cafe with you and see what comes up for them. There's also a beautiful Instagram page that Lindsay Marks has set up and is managing for us, and we're so grateful to her. And so we want to invite you to join us in any way that you can, share in any way you can. Ann Baker said, how do I sign up for your newsletter? And I'm going to put the email in the chat. All you have to do is email us and say, sign me up. And then bada bing, bada boom, you're in. So I think I've covered all the housekeeping. Please keep your microphone on mute until it's time for us to dialogue with our thought leader today. Because while we love you and we embrace every single part of your life, it may not be appropriate to hear every single part while our speaker is speaking. And so keep your mics on mute, utilize the chat. I'll keep an eye on the chat for your questions, just like I saw Ann's amazing question. And I will throw all the links and the email to sign up to the newsletter in the chat. Back to you, Claire.
Well, thanks, Danielle and all. We are really excited to have Sharon here today, and I'm bringing up her website, I hope. Yes, there we are. And the new book. I don't know if you have read Reclaiming You. Some of you who are my students, was your assigned reading 2 months ago, and we have been really diving deep in the work. I think one of my favorite parts of the whole book in Reclaiming You are the practices at the end, which are so accessible, even if you're not a therapist or a helping professional. They are really for you. So not only is this an equipping book from you, Sharon, about moving from trauma to resilience for practitioners, but it's also powerful for individuals. And I want you to know that Sharon has been working with the Enneagram for a bit, and she has learned to resource your hidden strengths and resilience, and really giving Enneagram lovers the ability through her own work. And so here's one of my favorites, the quotes from you. For me, trauma is what isolates us and connects us. And trauma recovery recognizes we are in the same sea together, just maybe traveling in different boats. So when the storm hits, we need to lean into grace and kindness and healing together. And it is together that healing and connection happen. So we are really fortunate to have Sharon with us today. And so I just want you all to throw up a wonderful welcome sign from your emojis to Sharon. Let her know we are so glad she's with us, and that we're open and we're receptive to receiving from you today, Sharon. And so we just want to offer you all the welcoming we can in all the ways to say that we're here to learn, and we're here to receive from you as a person who's practicing. And so welcome, Sharon.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Danielle. This is fun. This is a fun chapter. I'm excited about this. It's a big topic, so I'm going to try to go through as much content as I can to equip you. But I would like for you right now, wherever you're at, if you've got a piece of paper or just log this in your head, why are you here? Why are you interested in the topic? And just make a mental note, because there's some things that I have for you of why I want you here, but I want you to really personalize this. Claire, I'm going to share my screen. We're going to move with some PowerPoint. That way, if you want to jot down some items, and then afterwards, I'll send Danielle and Claire the PowerPoint so you can circulate it and use the content in whatever way you would like. So figure out your why. And here's what I would love for you to walk away with. One, understanding what a gatekeeper is. You know, as Claire and Danielle have mentioned, every one of you brings to the table something that you can give to someone who is going through trauma or recovering from trauma, as well as what you can offer for yourself. I want to just give a quick refresher on the impact of trauma to the body, heart, and mind. And then I'm going to just do a little bit of information on the confounding variables that impact trauma, which is oftentimes called the intersection of trauma and something else. And then how the Enneagram type resilience traits impact trauma recovery, how you as a professional or anyone walking along someone going through trauma can really use the resilience traits of that person. Now, here's the interesting thing, Claire, I was telling Claire and Danielle, I am learning how to use Microsoft PowerPoint when really I'm a Mac person. And so where is my other slide here? It's not moving.
Can you just hit your arrow, Sharon, and it will come? Just hit your...
The play?
Nope, on your actual key.
Oh, here we go. Yes.
Come
See,
on.
it magically happened for me. Okay, okay. So gatekeepers, here's what I call a gatekeeper. And I'm excited to be moving into the fall with a new certification program where we can learn more, dive a little bit deeper. But again, remember, this is very high level overview. Gatekeepers can be parents, grandparents, family members, aunts, aunties, uncles, teachers, athletic coaches. Then you move to the next level of gatekeeping, which is your clergy, spiritual directors, life coaches, healing practitioners, first responders, and nurses. I lump all of those together because they have more education than maybe the first tier of your parents, athletic coaches. Then you move to the next level, which is your psychiatrists, doctors, licensed workers, people who are trained to work specifically with trauma. And I put down at the bottom, here's what's really important, is to understand your role. Gatekeepers typically are in the function of a support role model versus a medical role model. So if you look at the psychiatrists, doctors, licensed therapists, they're more in the medical role. They're going to treat trauma from a medical perspective. Never underestimate your ability walking beside someone as a gatekeeper in the support role or model, because I was telling Claire the other day, oftentimes those people on the front lines, meaning parents, grandparents, clergy, spiritual directors, life coaches, they're going to be the first to hear about something that has impacted a client via trauma. So you're going to get the first information, which is why we want all of you to be informed on trauma care. Then there is power in walking beside the person. Once you hand the baton over to someone who is qualified to work from a medical perspective, and we'll understand that a little bit more, the difference in that, you continue to walk beside that person in your support role, because you will hear more from them than oftentimes the medical role person. Does that make sense? So the gatekeeping is very important. I really consider you on the front line. So here's what we want to look at when we think of trauma. And I'm not certain if everyone has read the book or not, but I'm going to move as if you have not. There's all different kinds of traumas. There's big T traumas, little t traumas. Oftentimes they're impacted by the proximity to that trauma. So I'm going to take, for instance, a case study here in my hometown of Nashville. Just a couple months ago, we had the shooting that occurred at our Covenant school. Really the daughter church of the church that I go to, our church plant. And based on the proximity, the exposure, the prior experience that anyone in that building had with something like that leveled up the trauma, the impact of trauma. So if, for instance, the medical doctor that was there early that morning, who was giving here's what I do as a doctor to the children. She left 15 minutes before the shooter arrived, went back to the hospital. She wasn't in close proximity to the trauma, right? She wasn't exposed to the traumatic event, but it did impact her. Versus the person who was right involved, the adult right involved, had close proximity, was exposed to the sights, the sounds, the smells, all of that. And that makes their experience completely different, but it is still considered trauma. So one thing that you really want the person that you're walking through trauma to understand is that their response to the traumatic event is normal. The event is abnormal. And I think oftentimes trauma can make someone feel crazy inside, like there's something wrong with them. And so the community around really needs to validate, no, it is the event or the thing that happened to you that is not normal. You are, and all of your resources through whatever reactivity you're having right now are really coping mechanisms, protective strategies to help you get through this traumatic event. I want to give you an example of different confounding variables that might impact trauma and the victims of trauma that level it up and make it even harder to recover. And I have a great example from my family. This is my daughter, Sharon, on the left, her partner, and my grandson, Kingston. And he was born 2 years ago during the pandemic. And oh my gosh, it radically changed my life in many ways. That day, I vividly remember taking her into the hospital. Otis had to work, so I arrived with her. And during the pandemic, it was locked down, so you were only allowed one person in the room. However, after speaking with the charge nurse and the midwife, they were very receptive to having me stay in the room until Otis could get there. I had gone to some of the baby classes to help her, so I was a little equipped on that end. As time went on, I kept wondering where Otis was, and my phone was going in and out because of the hospital layers of building and whatnot. Well, he ended up texting me that he was there and he'd been there for 30 minutes downstairs. And I said, okay, well, come on up. Here's the room. I'll meet you at the elevator and take you to the room. 5-10 more minutes goes by, no Otis. And I'm thinking, what is going on here? So I called him. I said, Otis, what's going on? He said, I'm sitting down here. They won't let me go up. I said, well, go talk to the security, because they had a lot of security around the hospital because of the precautions of the pandemic. And you know what? He stopped and he he said, I don't feel comfortable doing that. And I said, well, Otis, the baby's coming. We got to get you up here. You've got to be here for the baby. And he kind of went into freeze mode. Now let's back up and understand their Enneagram types. Otis is a type 9, 1-to-1 type 9. My daughter is a counterphobic 6. So I'm a type 3, 1-to-1 3. And, at first I thought, oh, this is his type coming out. He doesn't want to make waves. And then I thought, no, there's more to this, right? There's more to this. There's something about the word security. There's something about what had happened in our nation prior to that. So I went downstairs myself, talked to the security, brought him upstairs to the room. He was in the room for maybe 30 minutes. Shaylin was bouncing on her ball, the big midwifery balls that they bring to make the baby, kind of push through a little faster. And the charge nurse had rolled over and a new charge nurse was on the floor. She came charging into the room, looked at Otis and said, you need to get out right now. You're not allowed in here, and escorted him back down to security. My daughter was completely confused, in tears already because she was in pain. I was shocked because, one, there was the way it was handled. So went outside, talked with our midwife, who happened to be Navajo American, and she wasn't in the room when that happened. She made a couple calls, and I went downstairs to talk with him. And here's where we have to be very careful when we work with people, not to move, in my opinion, with Enneagram type first. And remember, I said I was thinking maybe he was moving into the space of peacemaking, maybe for the 9 area. I needed to acknowledge past trauma, the color of his skin, race, what was going on in our country at that time, where he grew up geographically, which was in Compton, Los Angeles area. I needed to understand that he was male, that the impact of what was going on in the hospital was affecting him differently than my daughter. And I will tell you, still to this day, once we got him back into the room, he was disengaged on a level that was not there prior to when that nurse came in. And so as you move through, this is just a great example of my daughter was impacted, I think, in a little T way because of that experience. Otis's impact, he still speaks about it today, was more of a big T trauma. Now, being able to identify that, those are considered confounding variables. Those are outside variables that impact the variable of trauma going on, right? All of those situations. It's very important as gatekeepers to understand. This is just one example of how this might impact trauma differently from person to person and type to type. Then we move into physiologically. So behind every person is a biology of that person. And it is nearly impossible to work through trauma and traumatic experiences without acknowledging what's going on in the body, what's going on in the brain. So we have the body experience, the nervous system, the physiology of the person being hit with the experience. You have fight, flight, freeze, and fawn modes that come from the head experience, what the mind, the brain is interpreting. So in Otis's and Shaylin's case, Otis goes into fawning, conforming, and you can understand that because of the different variables impacting the trauma, right? You can understand that from his experience. My daughter does not go into fawning. She goes into fighting. So in that moment, she was yelling at the nurse, not just because she was birthing a baby, but because she was trying to fight the system that was holding their experience back. So the brain then responds to trauma from a different way. And that's within the portion of the brain called the amygdala, which hijacks the frontal lobe, the ability to think logically, clearly. That gets hijacked. And And in my opinion, I'm grateful that God made our bodies this way, because we need to be in response mode. But oftentimes in that response mode, it comes across very reactive. Think of those fight, flight, freeze, or fawn as coping mechanisms, protective mechanisms that actually help the person get through the experience they're going through. The problem is when that happens, the amygdala then goes to store those memories in a part of the brain called the hippocampus. And you'll see that down here. And the hippocampus, because it's on such alert, the brain is overwhelmed, it files it incorrectly. So unless someone has processed that trauma, they'll actually take that unresolved trauma into the next trauma and overlay it, or be triggered in the now. Feels like they're going through a traumatic experience, but they're not really going through a traumatic, it's just a trigger point. They'll feel the past as if it's in the present because that memory is stored improperly. It hasn't been resolved. I have a question. Go ahead. I can't see everybody on the screen, but who has a question?
So I think Sharon will probably hold questions until the question and response time. So feel free to keep going, and whoever is asking, just hold that question. We are going to come back to you.
Okay, good. So then we have to look at so we've got the nervous system, we have the brain responding to trauma, we have all those confounding variables responding to the traumatic event. Now look at all the other systems that are going on in the body that are now alerted to the fact that something very bad is happening to this person. So you have a whole body response to the traumatic event, not just a heart response, not just a brain response, but everything is engaged to keep that person alive. When you're walking through this experience with someone, here's what I think is the baseline best place to be. Recognize that they're going through a traumatic experience. If they don't recognize it, it's okay. You can offer it to them by saying, have you thought about this? Well, what about this? The power of your ability to listen is huge. We don't have to have all the answers. We really don't. If we sit and we listen to someone, just sharing their story can be a portal of healing. It offers some conduit for them to move that trauma around just by being heard. The power of questions, being curious, being willing to sit in that humble place of, I don't know. Someone can really tell if you're trying to fix them versus sit and let them figure it out and you just be there as a sounding board. And sometimes that's just what people need. They need a mirror so they can see themselves. They need a mirror to see the trauma. They also need a mirror to see their resilience. And we'll get to that a little bit later. And the power of holding space. If you have a pen and paper, you can write this phrase down. Holding space is so important. In Danielle's certification courses, it looks like she teaches people how to create psychologically safe spaces in the workplace. This is the epitome of that for a person going through trauma, is for someone else to hold space for the dysregulation that trauma it puts on people. And for you to hold that space is pretty powerful. Then I think what is important is for you to help the person recognize, are they in a feedback loop? And as coaches, spiritual directors, healing practitioners, when you're working with someone and you feel like, man, we've been here before. We've just traveled, we just looped back around, got off the freeway, went down, back around, got back on the freeway, went back up the freeway and got back off the same exit. You're probably in a feedback loop with that client, meaning the trauma is lodged somewhere unresolved and it is very difficult for them to move through it. So traditional therapeutic techniques or traditional coaching techniques, traditional ways of doing it probably are not going to help. There's many different trauma loop assessments that you can give to your client. There's stress screeners. Sometimes clients don't even realize how stressed they are. And if you have them do a 1 to 10 questionnaire assessment, they'll begin to see some of the symptoms that are coming from their stress. I love the ACE inventory. That is powerful for people in helping them understand, even if they're being triggered now by an unresolved trauma in childhood. So when you have someone who is not in recovery and moving towards resolution of the trauma or integration of the trauma, here's what you're going to have. You're going to have impaired decision-making. And why not, right? You have all of these responses towards the trauma. This person is dealing with, if not 5 of these, all of these. And then they're trying to move through their day-to-day, making critical, discerning decisions. It's not going to happen. They're in dysregulation. And so as, you know, spiritual director, coach, teacher, being aware of these symptoms and helping the client identify them is very key, because it will also help you understand and maybe show more compassion towards their decision-making because it's impaired. Will it always be impaired? No, because as they resolve the trauma, their decision-making will become better. So here's just a smidget of what the Enneagram can offer to your clients. Just, I mean, we're barely scratching the surface of this, Claire, Danielle. I mean, we've got a whole week of stuff we could be talking about. So helping them find that portal of resilience is very key. And it's one of the things that I believe people in support roles can do best. You're going to see that person more often than the doctor, more often than the psychiatrist, more often than their therapist. So one, we talk about in the book, Renee, the movement, meaningful connections, and mindfulness as a way to get there. And that's using the centers of intelligence. For me, when I work with my clients, I move first with the centers of intelligence and less into their type until the person is regulated. Internally regulated, nervous system regulated, where they can actually sit with some more of their type. These centers offer us a wealth of knowledge and action steps to give your clients. So movement, it is impossible in my experience for someone who's gone through trauma to resolve trauma without moving the body, understanding how the body works. So that taking care of physical well-being, I know it sounds so simple, but there have been times in my office where I have gotten up, gone to my refrigerator, and gotten a cold bottled water for my client because they're so dysregulated. They're not even in their body. They need to drink something to bring them back into the presence. That's a form of movement, you know, because we're engaging the 5 senses. So you can use movement with your clients, taking a walk with them, processing while they're walking. Meaningful connections. This is another reason why gatekeeper support role models are very vital to the recovery of a trauma victim. Meaningful connections help provide co-regulation. Co-regulation in the psychological world is you and me, we're in this together. I'm in a good place where I can carry some of this weight for you. We're going to do this together and you're going to watch me because I'm going to mirror back to you that, hey, we got this. I'm going to breathe with you. I'm going to cry with you. I'm going to be strength for you. I'm going to be the bridge, you know, that you can't see the hope to get to the other side. So you can borrow my hope until you get there, right? You're going to provide co-regulation through meaningful connection. You're going to teach them how to encourage, understand, and be kind to themselves instead of self-judgment. Now, for each of our types, these movement, meaningful connections, it's all going to look different per type, right? Each type's going to have a different struggle with embracing whether or not they can get moving, whether or not they can get into meaningful connections. And then mindfulness, the power of presence. So once you've got your client kind of in movement, feeling a little more power from the body, like they're regulating their body, moving into meaningful connections, relying on people, relying on you, trusting. The power of presence is bringing them into the now. Hey, it's important to understand what happened to you, but it's also important for you to know that you're here with me right now. You and me right now. And one technique I use is engaging the 5 senses. If you have a dysregulated client, even if you're walking and it feels like you've just lost them, they've gone someplace, they've detached, use their 5 senses. Hey, what do you hear right now? Can you hear the air conditioning? What do you smell? You smell your perfume, your cologne. What do you smell? What do you feel? Do you feel the fan? What do you see? What do you taste? All of that brings them right back into the moment. And you know what? If you're in a meaningful connection with them, they're going to feel safe. And if you've provided only 30 minutes of safety for that person, you have given them the biggest gift. Given them the biggest gift, because they might leave your office, your space, and you know what? They go back into the world, and the world doesn't understand them. The world doesn't get it, and they're hit with everything. That's what you can provide. It's just one technique.
Yeah. And so I want to just say, Sharon, wow, we need a week. And we want to make sure that folks can ask you questions, because even in the beauty of just offering a cold cup of water, right? Or a hot cup of coffee, and giving gatekeepers an understanding that that's helping them change. And just that movement can be helpful. And you and I talked yesterday, and we were talking about how when other gatekeepers or helping professionals that even in that second level, that we want to be sure that we are providing that safe place, but then opening up another space to see someone from the clinical perspective.
Right.
Like when those particular ways to acknowledge that you put up just a little bit earlier, to say, oh, I might not be the person to sit with my client at this time. Maybe I can later, right? Or this is enough grandma advice, or presence, or, whatever, but maybe I can drive, maybe I can be the driver for this grandchild to see a clinician. So I wonder what questions there are percolating right here, because I think, you got to read the book. I'm just telling you, you got to read the book. It is going to be so helpful to you as a gatekeeper. And even as a person who has experienced trauma. So there are just beautiful practices like that, like get a cup of cold water, right? Mindfulness and meaningful connection and movement practices that can help you regulate even your own body. So would it be all right now then, Sharon, to let some folks ask you, and then maybe we can have you back, or maybe they're coming to the conference, or maybe they're going to take you up on a training. But right now, what are a couple of questions that we could bring to Sharon? And I'm going to go ahead and yes, Danielle, you can unmute yourself.
First of all, Sharon, thank you so much for the work that you've done and for the hours and hours of due diligence that has brought us to be able to get this like synthesis, of your work. And I want to say that this is a synthesis, and my plan is to read this book and just take bites out of the spine of the book, right? I love the space that you have been able to hold for your daughter and her expanding family, as well as Otis. And so that story and the information around what's going on inside the body when someone is holding trauma, as someone who teaches diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility through the lens of empathy and with the wisdom of the Enneagram, my question to you is, how would you share with people of racial privilege, right, how to go from intellectual allyship to full-bodied solidarity, knowing what you know as a trauma-informed practitioner and a counselor?
So that's a great question, Danielle. And I think that's where, if you really understand trauma, you understand the impact that it has on the whole person, you can engage in full-bodied empathy. It really, and especially around race. So for Otis, his trauma was coming from the color of his skin. And so Shaylin's did not. She did not have that experience. And the only way that I, as a practitioner, can hold space for that is to, one, not try to find a way to find a similar experience. Like, oh, no, there's just not. I do not have a similar experience to understand how the color of skin can cause racial trauma. I don't. And I think when you move into the reality of how impactful trauma is to a person, and it can hold them hostage, so to speak, hold them in where they're not able to dream, hope, move forward, or they're constantly revisiting these things. And from a racial trauma perspective, the revisiting, Danielle, is, from what I have observed, can be anything from very small, little t traumas, we call those microaggressions, throughout the day, to where it adds up. It's just consistent. And so watching that and observing it allows me to sit back, even though I don't understand it from my own position. It allows me to actually honor and say, it's not been my experience. However, I'm going to trust all that's going on with you, that is your experience, and I'm going to offer what I have, even though I can't stand in it. Does that make sense?
It does. And as I'm listening, I really appreciate that what I hear you say is really consistent with my teaching, which is to trust the lived experience of the person who is experiencing the trauma and believe them. That's where empathy begins. And the thing that I would offer here as an invitation to expand is that oftentimes we talk about racial discrimination and white supremacy and racism in the passive voice, and I'd love for us to start naming that it's not the color of Otis's skin that's causing the trauma, it's the ignorance of folks who judge him inaccurately based on his complexion. You know what I mean?
Definitely,
and so
definitely.
I would love to start directly naming the folks who are causing the trauma versus passively thinking about skin color as the cause, because his skin is beautiful. We all saw it. You know what I mean?
Danielle, I think there's more than just the color of his skin going on in that situation that they were judging. So if we were to say the layers, the different variables, he is, former ASU football player. He's a big guy. There were a lot of things of where I think they were stereotyping and judging in a way that added to his, moving into his type and moving away from advocating, which then that's where I would encourage people to use their privilege, like, the Navajo American midwife, myself.
Absolutely.
Right. to move
Yes.
towards that and towards the new charge nurse. And I actually did, the story's so big, Danielle, I couldn't get into it, but I contacted the CEO of Banner Health and was able to use my experience. And I believe it was heard. I'm not saying this is right. It was heard from a different place. And I would say those in this room can use their white privilege in a way to be a better ally in certain situations.
Absolutely.
And we
what I
should
heard from you
never
just
step
now-
back.
What I heard from you just now is to believe the lived experience of the person who's experiencing the trauma, offer what you can, and use your own privilege to advocate for them.
Yes, yes. And
Bam.
Yes. Let's throw up some
Yeah.
stuff here. We've got emojis of thank you, right? That's yeah. And I think one of the things I want to ask, I don't see any other questions up. I think one of the things I want to ask, and I'm going to, I don't know which slide you used, but where the information is stored improperly. And, I think when we look at where that information is being stored, that is that the brainstem?
So that is in the amygdala.
Right, but
And
where
yes,
it's
it's
stored,
in
look
the
how close it is in the brainstem there.
reptilian part of the brain.
Uh-huh.
Yes. So it's the very first part of the brain to be developed,
Mhm.
right? The very first part. However, it does get improperly stored in the hippocampus, and the hippocampus is that filing place that's given to us to store memories.
Mhm.
And if you have the opportunity to process your trauma, it's going to get stored properly. If it's not processed, it goes unresolved, it's going to come out in other areas of your life when you're triggered.
Yes.
So it's very
and-
important. Yeah.
Yeah, so here's my question on that, and I'm going to show you my slide here based on Jerome Libba's work, where he actually flipped the Enneagram and put 8, 9, and 1 at the bottom, and basically says, this is how functional neurobiology works. So we all have a brain stem, we all have a left brain, and we all have a right brain, right?
Mhm.
And so just even noticing where the hippocampus is and where the brainstem is and how fight, flight, freeze, fawn comes up from the brainstem and how close it is to the hippocampus, it just feels like if we can help people engage all of their brain, as you show so beautifully in the practices that everybody, and so I'll show you this. I take your mindfulness, meaningful connections, and movement and say all 3 need to be inactive for regulation, right? And
Yes.
so, yeah. And so I got to tell you, I'm so happy to have listened to the way you were talking about it being improperly stored and the hope there. And you use that word hope, the hope that we can actually, if we have harmony practices to engage all 3 centers, even the fact that you don't start teaching the Enneagram from type, but from centers, and that there is a way to help regulate this dysregulation and those reactions that would come up through the improperly stored memories and the work of our, beautiful brainstem that keeps us alive, fight, flight, freeze, fawn. So I just want to say I'm already having more fun over here and taking a look at how I can develop a new slide based on your brilliance. So yeah, that's all I want to say about that. So if you want to go back to your slide, feel free or let it go. But I love the word Danielle used, synthesis. This is very synthesizing in the work of the Enneagram. And whatever discipline or model each of us are using, whether, I won't get into all the models in these last few minutes, but yeah, so accessible for hope.
Good.
So what do you want to say about hope? I think you had a slide on that was really, there was a quote you had.
So Catherine is raising her hand.
Oh, come on, Catherine. Come on, Catherine.
Oh, man, there. It takes me forever to get rid of that little microphone thing. It's not so much a question as, first of all, a compliment to you, Sharon, for your work. And I have known Renee for a very long time and consider her not only a friend, but a source of wisdom and helpfulness. And I just want to say one thing about being a spiritual director or a coach. Know when you've hit your limit, and you need to source out to refer to somebody who can take the next steps. I think damage can be done, even with the best of intentions and even with your wonderful suggestions, if you overstep your own limits. And I think, and with the people I work with, I try to emphasize that as well. You know, sometimes we just have to go someplace else for help. So I just thank you for the opportunity to know you better, Sharon. You know, I've read most of the book. But I just wanted to share that thing that keeps coming up for me. Know your limits, refer out when you have to. So thank you.
Yes, Catherine, and that's definitely, you know, this 1 hour is actually a 40-hour course.
Right.
So when you think of all of those confounding variables and we do a deeper dive into each one of those, and that's just for gatekeeper training, right? That's just for, you know, I was in Guatemala a couple of weeks ago with orphanage workers, you know, so they're not licensed medical professionals. However, they're on the front lines and they need to have trauma-informed care in order to help these littles. So you're right. And one way that you can know your limit is if you're recognizing that feedback loop, you know, in your client. If you're not getting anywhere, there's a reason why you're not getting anywhere. Don't push it. Maybe it's time to hand off. The other reason why I don't go into Enneagram types and using a lot of Enneagram work that would be maybe for someone who's in a stable situation is because when people are going through trauma, they don't have the headspace. They simply do not have. That's why handing out books or doing this or doing that, I just don't do that. Just come to my office and sit with me because I'm going to sit with you. And then if you do want to work further with a client, then you better do your work. If you want to go do trauma recovery from a medical model, go to school. If you want to do trauma-informed care from a coaching model, then go get your certification. You know, equip yourself so that you will be better for your client. And I think, Catherine, that's such a great, and Renee is great. I get to see her tomorrow. So yes. Yeah.
Are you going to be here in Phoenix?
I was in Phoenix 2 weekends ago for Kingston's 2nd birthday, and we didn't get to see each other, but we talked on the phone. We Zoom about every other week, so I'll see her by Zoom. Yeah.
Sharon, do you offer a trauma-informed certification?
So I am heading in that direction where it can be a video. We're finishing that up online so you can do it, you know, whenever you want. And then an experience. I would prefer the experience training where people gather together, 15 of us, and we're in a quiet place. Because I think too, Danielle, what's most important next to what Catherine said is you got to do your own work. So if you haven't resolved your own trauma or recognized it or recognize your triggers, and then you go into working with people who are recovering, you're gonna sometimes project what you're going through or haven't resolved onto their experience. And that's another area where you can do harm without even realizing it. So in an experience programming, I can work with each person, recognizing where they might have some unresolved trauma to help them be better caregivers, along with the regular training. So good question. Yeah.
So y'all, I'm dropping Sharon's website to all of her offerings in the chat, as well as the Amazon link to her book. Sharon, is there another link that would be better for your book, or is the Amazon link okay?
Amazon link is great. And if I can put a little pitch in here, I was telling Claire, if you all love the book, would you write a review, please? Because we are trying to get the word out. And from what I understand, Amazon's got like a algorithm or something that works. So that would be helpful. Yes.
Absolutely. We will do that. We'll put in our review, and we have about 3 minutes left, but I see Andrea with her hand up.
It's really loud where I am, so I apologize. But I wanted to know, is there a way on your website for us to get on a mailing list or something that when you have that training ready, we could be notified?
Yes. So when you go to the website that Danielle put in the chat, it will automatically allow you to subscribe. And then we will be sending out updates on it. Yes.
If you scroll to the bottom of the 9pass.com, you can connect.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Or SharonKBall.com. Both get you there. Well, why don't we just take a moment here and take a breath? This has been a lot, and there's probably much happening in our bodies as a result. So just follow your breath in and down, up and out. Or if it's helpful, at a 2-to-1 ratio, in to 4, out to 8, and swallow. Just a few more times, honoring this vessel that you've been sitting in, this body. And allow yourself to take in a moment of gratitude that you've experienced, even in the last 60 minutes or in the last 24 hours. A place or a person or a pet, an interaction that you can bring right into your consciousness as a moment of gratitude. And then maybe you even want to breathe that right into your heart space. It might sound strange, but bringing your breath in and around your heart space. And allowing that person, place, or pet, just that gratitude to come right into your heart. Imagining that you're nourishing your heart right here. And then allow yourself to come back to the screen when you feel you can. And say goodbye in whatever way you can. And thank you, Sharon.
Thank you so much, Sharon.
You're the one I took right into my heart.
Claire,
Mm.
your meditation was like a siren. My daughter came in and she was like, you know what? I feel like I need to get in on this. So
Oh, Sage. I feel gratitude for you. You are such a loving presence, cuddling up there with your mom.
Thank you. Just like you do. Oh my goodness.
oh, thank you.
Yeah.
So good. I am so excited, Sharon. I love that you're going to be speaking at the conference. If I'm not able to make your workshop there, I'm going to be talking with you in the margins of your book. So I'm excited. I'm pulling it up to order it right now. It's so good. Thank you so much.
Oh my goodness, yes.
I
And
appreciate y'all letting me share. I love these quick shares, but it also reminds me of how like just a lot. There's a lot. So and I'll send you the PowerPoint too, so y'all can send out.
oh,
that way you
wow,
can get
that's
reference.
super generous. Thank
And
you.
is there any language that we should include with the PowerPoint about, like, for instance, Claire allows for folks to reference her slides in their presentation
Yes.
as long as they maintain the authorship of the slides?
Yep.
By
definitely.
maintaining the her logo and her name on the actual slide.
Yes. Thank you.
Is
Yeah,
that cool?
that's great.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you,
We
ladies. I
see
appreciate
9
it.
paths there. We do. We will honor 9 paths. In fact, I can even change, even as I showed you a couple of those slides, that as I'm training spiritual directors and saying, wow, we have access in the back of this book to so many practices that will help make space. And so, Sharon, brilliant work. We love you. I mean, I know I can, Danielle.
You have no idea. Like, you have no idea. I was sweating today. There's a whole backstory. And then when Danielle, you asked me that question, in all transparency, I've got knots down the back of my back because it is such there's so much to it.
Yeah.
Answer the question in a short period of time can either do more harm or not do enough, or it's just like,
I think you knocked it out the park, though.
I
That's
hope
why-
so,
Yeah.
because
That's
my
why
back is like,
I emphasized your 3 steps and put them in the chat, because I was like, no,
Good,
this is the first
good.
step into integration.
yeah.
Like,
And I
Yes.
definitely don't want to widen the gap. I want to bring that, like, it's just, anyways, one of these days I'll but I felt the trauma in me, in my back, responding in that question. I was like, so I appreciate it. And it gave me an opportunity to get my big girl panties on again. And
well, you know what? It was more like an assist, Sharon, because your response to Otis's experience in the room was really the question. What I wanted to do is position you to give folks a clear path.
Yep.
So that they don't have to wait until they're in a situation like that. You can do that in the grocery store.
Yeah,
You can do that in one-on-one
Yes.
conversations. You know what I
That's
mean?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things that I love that Dr. Egerton said is, you can never call yourself an ally. Somebody else has to call you that, right? Danielle just called you that.
Right.
So there is, I think, something really beautiful that happened here. And then you followed it up with due diligence, saying, this is a 40-hour course.
Mhm.
And so as you can breathe that right into your back here and give yourself a little massage.
Yeah, and
Like,
that's
you
why
know
I
what I
kept
mean?
saying this is a synthesis, y'all. This
Yes.
is the tea bag. This is not the
Yeah.
whole field of tea. You know.
Yes.
That's it. That is it.
Thank
And
you.
thank you so
Great.
much for your time. I will be putting in a review with great joy. And
Okay,
so,
thank you, Claire. Yes, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you
and
all.
all our students, it's going to be an assignment. You need to put in a review.
No.
Okay.
Appreciate y'all. Okay.
All
have a
right.
good day.
See you in San Francisco.
No, I know, but Danielle, you're not going to be there.
I'll be there.
Oh,
yeah.
good. Okay, good.
Oh yeah, she's
Super.
there.
Oh Lord. Yes.
Fantastic. Okay.
Bye,
Thank you.
Sage. See you
Say bye.
soon. Bye.
Bye, y'all. Thank you.
Thank you.